Welcome to Proven Sustainable Conversations, a collection of thought-provoking talks with Indigenous and Maroon people and their supporters to realize and challenge our conscious and unconscious colonized thinking and behaviors.
Greetings, Kuuyux. Did I get your pronunciation of your name right?
Yeah, you got it exactly right. Kuuyux.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and we just want to give you the opportunity to open us up with whatever you would like to say or do in whatever language you want to bring it. Get us started.
Okay. Well, Kamehameha Kasuda Angwan to Unangan way, Unangan Kuuyux. I said, good morning. The morning tastes good. That's the way we greet each other every day. And I said, hello, my other self, Angwan, which is another way we greet each other every day. Amongst the Unangan people, we don't say Aleut, which is the name given to us by Western society. Unangan means the people by the sea. And Kawalangan Unangan, which means people of the sea lion, and that's the stellar sea lion. And I said my traditional name is Kuuyux. That's the name given to me by the last Kuuyux that was left alive amongst my people. And it means like an arm extending out from the body, a carrier of ancient knowledge into modern times, a messenger. So I've been living the legacy of that name since I was 4 years old. So, hello, everyone.
Since you were 4 years old, what are you drinking? Is it coffee?
Coffee. I can't start the morning without coffee.
Okay, that's right. It's morning where you are and afternoon where I am. Okay, let's get started. You mentioned that you've been carrying this identity since you were 4 years old. How did that come to be at 4 years old?
Well, the last Kuuyux that was left alive, his name was Sergei Suvorov. He was from Nikolsky along the Aleutian chain, village of Nikolsky. And he knew he had to find the next Kuuyux. And so he searched in a way that is very similar to the way that Tibetans find the Dalai Lama or the Lama. He just feels, and he went to several villages and finally found me on St. Paul Island, and he gave me one test to prove to him that I was in fact the next Kuuyux, and so he gave me his name, and we call each other Kuuyux.
Do you remember what that test was?
Absolutely. When I was 4 years old, I had a big wart on my hand. It was very, very long and hard. And he asked me, what would you like to do? Anything at all. And I said, I'd like to get rid of my wart. And he said, okay, go out there and get a blade of grass and bring it back. And so I did that, and he tied it around that wart, and he says, pull it. So I pulled it. And I'll tell you, that night, half of the wart was gone. And within a week, all of it was gone. It melted down into nothing. And so that was the main test that he gave me to show that to him that I was the next Kuuyux.
All right. Wow.
And he wanted to take me to his home so he could spend time year long. I'm restrained by time, but my parents thought I'm too young. I'm 4 years old. No, we can't have him leave our house. And so I stayed, and he came every year. Uh, and so
Okay. In one of your talks, I can't remember which one it was, but you referenced the um, location from which your people migrated to the Aleutians. And if I'm not mistaken, you said that your people 10,000 years ago came out of the Nile Valley, out of Egypt. Am I correct?
that's correct. We went from Egypt to Outer Mongolia to Siberia to Kamchatka and across by our traditional craft we call Ikyak and Ulukdan and Nekhalach. The three different kinds of traditional craft. Not by the Bering Land Bridge, as most anthropologists say.
Uh-huh. 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 Okay. I've got, and you already met my colleague on here today is Kelsey Green with Proven Sustainable. And Kelsey, I'm gonna ask you to come in after this next question. What was your traditional upbringing like?
Little question, Casey.
Yeah. Well, it was quite remarkable. Uh, uh, my people have been out in the Bering Sea for over 10,000 years and we're still there. And the entire village raised me. And it's not a myth that it takes a village to raise a child. I had to spend equal time with the men, equal time with the women, equal time with the elders, and equal time with my peers. My job as a peer, of course, was to play and watch, listen, and learn. And the men would teach me about the men's ways and hunting, fishing, and all of that kind of stuff. The women would teach me the women's ways, and the elders would do nothing but tell me stories. Every week they would invite me out to go camping with them, and so I would go out with them, and they would tell me story after story. And this happened from age 5 to age 13. Every time I met someone in the village or encounter someone in the village, they always affirm me all the time. I mean, everyone. When I would encounter an adult, I would be greeted like the long lost son. Kaya Kamuda, Luchizwa, Kakaz, come in, sit down, eat. That's why I was greeted by everybody in the village. And of course, I was never scolded. I don't know how many people have never been scolded, but that was something that I liked very much, because one time I stole $9 or $20 from my grandfather when I was 9 years old, and I wanted to buy this plastic airplane in the government store. And so I went down there and bought the plane, and unbeknownst to me, my aunt was standing right behind me. So I knew I was caught. But she didn't say a word to me until I walked out of the building. And then she says, in a very unaccusatory way, in Unangan Tunu we call it, but it's the Aleut language. She said, Larry, where'd you get that $20 from? And I knew I was caught. And I told her the truth. I said I stole it from my grandfather. And she goes, what do you think you should do about that? And, I knew I was caught, so I had to tell the truth. I said, well, I should take the plane back, get the money, and tell my papa I stole it from him. And she goes, Muslim, okay. And so I take the plane back, got the money back, and she took $20 out of her own pocket to buy the plane for me. Now, $20 was a lot of money in those days because our people, unbeknownst to most Americans and anybody who would listen to this, we were slaves of the U.S. government. And I can talk a little bit about that later, but anyway, $20, it would take a year to earn $20. And so I told my papa, I stole the money, $20 from you, Papa. And he says, "Echem na koch lakai." Good boy. And so the genius of that is that they focused on the correct behavior of the child, not the incorrect behavior. And so they were very careful not to scold me, but to affirm the positive things I did. And I never stole anything again for the rest of my life.
That's real character building, character affirmation, character. That's
Yeah.
I definitely want to come back to this topic and some topics that flow from that. But right now I want to turn it over to the lovely Kelsey.
Yes, thank you. I'm thinking within the culture I grew up within, more Western dominant culture of there's a lot of fear, I'd say, affiliated with parents and educators of, oh, if we don't show them the right way, if we don't correct this behavior now, it's going to become worse. Or so I'm curious if you can speak a little bit more to the bigger collective that you were part of that allowed that to be the case and for it to be so effective in how the youth learned and were raised.
Good question. My mom, she said, our people used to cry when a baby is born, and they would celebrate when we die. And today, of course, it's very opposite. It's the reverse society because we reverse all the laws for living. And so when you're a spirit being and you take human form, my people understood that being human is heavy compared to where we came from, which is spirit. And that we're going to face heavy things, and as well as light things, but yes, heavy things. And so we cry when the baby is born because we know what they're going to go through. And then when you die, of course, you go back to your free form. You can, and so that's why we celebrate it. And the elders, the job of adults in my culture is to provide the space for a child to learn, not tell them what to learn, how to learn, or to define anything. And my job as a child was to watch, listen, and learn. And it's very ingenious because you can expand out to the maximum of your capability without the interference of another being, especially parents. And they understood that if the parents interfered with our sacred path, then we are not doing our job as the caretakers of this spirit being in human form that that exists only for a short period of time. And so they were very careful, and they understood that even the slightest scolding would harm the child. And it would traumatize the child because your spirit being without any defenses. And we're learning as human beings. And so it was very important not to do anything that would be negative towards the growth of that being who is also spirit. And so that's what our people understood. Now, of course, with the introduction of Western colonization and all this kind of thing that come with it, and the way that the world teaches their young, they tell them what to do, how to do it, what to learn, how to learn, and to define everything. But when we grow up the way that I did, we developed what we call personal authority. Now, today's world, most people are looking on the outside of themselves for answers to the greatest problems that we face today. When you have personal authority, you control yourself, and you don't have any fear, because fear was non-existent amongst my people. And they always behaved in ways that were extremely courageous, and heart centered. Because I the reason I do this kind of thing now and talking with people in general is that I watched my elders during the childhood when we were slaves. I was born a slave. And I mean, the slavery under the U.S. government, we were slaves because they wanted a captive labor force to kill northern fur seal for their pelts. The U.S. government would take these pelts and sell them on the international market. And so we were kept as a captive labor force because we could efficiently kill seals. We know seal. And so we, when we protest, I would watch my dad go to work every day, and he was a cubber. He was a killer of seals. And he was forced to do that by the U.S. government. And there would be 4 or 5 men that would use this long stick and club the seal. And then they would be killed instantly by the next person in line, in this assembly line of people that would cut through the heart so that the seal is dead. And it was brutalizing work. And the men would work 17-hour days. They would kill up to 600,000 seal in 2 months. And, it was brutalizing work. I remember my first job as a teenager. I was 16 years old. I had to work in this processing plant that took seals, when they came by truckloads to the plant, they would just look grotesque. They would be all bloody and no skin on their face or anything. Their eyes would be bulging, and I would work, and I would wear rain gear so that the blood doesn't soak through. But when I would get home, I had to. My family insisted I take a shower every time, so I would take a bath. Rather, we didn't have showers at that time. These homes were provided by the government, and my skin was yellow because the blood soaked through the rain gear. And I would work 17-hour days, and that was the one good thing about that. I became very strong. But anyway, the men, if you protested, you were like one man I remember went down to the government agent's office and trashed his office because he was pissed off that that he was treated, that our people were treated the way they were. And the government agent knew he had to make an example out of the man. He had a wife and 5 kids. And he told the man, "You are banished to the end of the island, and we're not giving you any provision. And you're going to stay there for as long as I want." And his family members were taken and each one placed in a different household. And they were ordered not to associate with each other. And so the man survived because he had the people sneaked out provisions to him when the government agent didn't know. But he survived for 3 months at the end of the island by himself, and then he was repatriated back to the village, and the government agents told the man, "You are not going to see your family for the rest of your life. You are ordered not to associate with them or talk with them." And from that moment on, he went into a drunken stupor every day of his life until he died about 15 years ago. So that's an example of the way the government treated us. But thankfully, I had the elders who said, if you have hate in your heart or anger towards anyone, you hurt yourself. You don't hurt others. And by hurting yourself, you hurt our people. And so so I always lived that life of not hating, not having any anger towards anyone.
That's quite a story. That's quite a, no, let me get the right words. That's quite an experience, not a story. At 16 years old, having that experience, seeing those things, and having the understanding that to hate was to self-destruct, did you have that reality at 16?
I did, but not because I learned it from anybody. I just was that way.
How did the enslavement of your people interrupt their way of life and their way of being in the world as a community? What was the disruption and the adaptation that your people had to make to maintain their spirit?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I've never been asked that. During the week, you had to work for the government. And then you had one day off on Sunday. And during that time, the men, having been traumatized in such a way by killing millions of seal every year, they took to drinking, and they made home brew, and they would drink themselves into a stupor. And the women, not wanting to be left out from relationship with their men, joined them in. And so the entire time during that weekend, everybody, almost everyone in the village was drunk. And that we had at that time about 450 people. And out of that 450, there might have been 5 families that did not drink. And fortunately, I was my acha, my traditional mentor, who took me under his wing at age 5 to age 13. He and his family never drank, and he would teach me all about what it means to be a man, what it means to have reverence for all life, to the ethics and values of my people, all these kind of things. But yet, from age 5 to age 13, he may have said no more than 200 words to me. He would show it by example, and I would watch, listen, and learn. And I'm very thankful that I did that. I learned a lot from doing that with him. And we called each other Atra. So it was quite a good way to have someone help you to grow up as a human being. And so we have this saying about our name, the Unangan, means the real people by the sea. And every culture in Alaska and many other cultures around the world have the same kind of thing where you are a real human being. When you follow these teachings, then they are similar all over the world.
Mm. 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 Mm.
And so our culture was massively disrupted, but what kept us together, ironically, was the Russian Orthodox Church. That was the only place the U.S. government did not have any authority. And they could do whatever they wanted to do in that church. My grandfather, I had to be with him 24/7 starting at age 4. And I would for 2 years. So my grandfather would get to know me, and I would get to know my grandfather. And we would go down to the sea and take our shirts off and splash ourselves with the salt water of the Bering Sea and pray towards the east. And then that night, he might go, and I would have to join him to the Russian Orthodox Church, because he saw no difference as to where one got one's spirituality, not religion, but spirituality. And he taught me. I mean, he was the janitor for the government agent's home, and he would take me to work with him at his home, and this home would be very big, very elaborate, whereas we lived in small 3-bedroom wooden house or concrete houses. And he was very humble, but still quite an Unangan human being. And so when we would go down to the beach and pray, then that day we might walk on the island. And the island is very small, but I was born on it. It was 12 miles long and 5 miles wide.
Mm.
And but the thing was, it had 2 million seabirds and 1.4 million northern fur seal that lived on the island. And that's why the government was there. And we have 1,000 reindeer and 450 Unangan people. And so, but it was a magical place to be. Every chance I got, I would spend outdoors. And so one day we went out, and it was beautiful out. I mean, very unusual for St. Paul Island in the middle of the Bering Sea because we're called the birthplace of the winds. And this is where the winds come up. And it's always foggy and always cloudy or overcast. And we get 20 days of sunshine a year on the average. 20 days of sun. Yeah. But this day was totally clear. There was no wind. The sea was calm. The birds were singing. The seals were barking. And I had to say something in Unangan. But what I said was, "It's sure beautiful out." And my grandfather, he said, "Tuda, listen." And what he said, I took to my heart, and I knew what he said means that the things that happen to us that we experience on a full body level, they're not to be articulated because when we talk, we immediately diminish that experience as a human being. We can talk about it later, but that moment you have to take it in. And so you don't say anything, you just take it in. And that probably explains why my people have survived and thrived for over 10,000 years in the Bering Sea.
Because you know how to listen.
Exactly.
In the Russian Orthodox Church, you said this is one of the places that the U.S. government was not able to really oppress as much and interfere. Were there gatherings of your people within that space that was less interfered, and tying that to what you just shared about the power of experiences that are not diminished by speaking? Were there certain ways of gathering with your people in that church or elsewhere? I'm curious about the significance of other ways of gathering, drawing on spirit or otherwise, that can help with resilience of a culture or overcoming certain challenges or addressing them.
One of the things the government had was what we called a rec hall, a recreation hall. And there's a big floor. It's probably about a football field long. And our people would use that for social gathering. And also, the government did not allow us to congregate like that, except when we were doing that kind of thing, where we're socially gathering, or when we go to church. They did not interfere with that. They interfered with everything else. They didn't allow, our educational system was American. And so they didn't allow us to do anything that was traditional. And if you spoke your own language, you would be punished for it. That kind of thing. Very similar to what many other people have experienced. And so the women had urged the men to do something about our condition. And so the men knew that you couldn't congregate for political purposes. And so they asked the government agent's permission to meet to create a play for the government people. And so the government thought that was a great idea. But when the men got together, they were figuring out how to protest. And they knew that if they got the information to the outer world, that something might happen that would be good. And so they planned it and sneaked out a letter that they wrote to by someone who was a white person who was a stewardess on the plane that went to the island once a week to provide provisions and to transport government agents. And so the stewardess took this letter and found the only native paper in all of Alaska. It was run by a man called Howard Rock, and he created this newspaper that would talk about anything that Native people wanted to talk about. And so she took it to him, and he published this letter. This letter was picked up by the Human Rights Commission, and it was run by black men. He said, this is wrong. And of course, he understood what slavery is. And so he investigated and went to the Pribilof Islands. The government did not allow people to come to the island. You had to have government permission to do that. But he got the permission and got to the island and found that the allegations of servitude were true. And he put together this report that was turned into Congress, and it took a congressional act, but we achieved our political independence in 1966. And that was after a congressional investigation of this report. And they went up, the senator from Alaska, Greening was his name. He listened to the people and found out that these stories were true and put together this bill in Congress that ironically was called the First Seal Act of 1966. The main thing about it was our people, but the first seals were number one, so you had to do that. And so that gave us permission to participate in state and federal elections, to create a city for the first time in our lives, to establish any businesses that we wanted to do, the same things that most Americans have, and to be paid for our work. We figured out that we made the U.S. government about $90+ million with all the sale that they had at that time. That must be worth at least $3 billion now. But we were never paid. We were the only workers in the U.S. government that didn't get paid for what they did. We got rations. They rationed the food, the housing, the clothing, and the heat. All of these things were given to us by the government. Even the clothes that I wear as a child were government issue. So that's what part of our history was in terms of what they did and how we got to our freedom.
That's a marvelous telling. A marvelous telling. Your people gained independence in 1966. When did the enslavement begin?
And when the Russians arrived in 1745, the Russians had decimated 80% of our population in 50 years, and so what they did was killed all of the people who were the tradition bearers because they wanted to conquer and colonize the Aleutian chain so that the Russians could take fur from the island, from everywhere on the Aleutian chain. And so we were slaves of the Russians. The survivors, they had picked the best hunters and their families and took them to these islands, Pribilof Islands, St. Paul and St. George. And our people knew of the existence of these islands, but never settled there because it was called by our shaman as a land of great power. and that we can visit it, we can hunt there, but we cannot live there. And we call the island Tanach Amich, the land of mother's brother. And so it was a related land solution chain. And that was found thousands of years ago by our people. And so they knew the existence of this island. And so that's part of our history that many people have forgotten and most people don't know. So we were sold to the U.S. government by the Russians in 1867 when Alaska was purchased by the U.S. And so the U.S. government then took over, and they treated us even worse than the survivors were treated when the Russians left.
Wow. Yeah, slavery supposedly ended in 1865 for Africans in America, but it began for your people on the American side in 1867. That was at the same point that that was at the same point that the Reconstruction for people of African descent was taking place. The people really do not understand the importance of history and understanding what has transpired here. But let me digress for a moment. Your people understand the importance of listening. You grew up as a listener. You grew up with adults who taught you how to listen. What was the understanding of the role of language?
Oh, that's a very good one. You know, most linguists, they ignore the most important aspect of language. And the most important aspects are that the language, how it was created in the first place, is created by the vibration of the land that you're on and by your culture. And the language that you use is birthed out of that relationship with Mother Earth. And so we have this language that, for example, when we can call the animals. And so when we had to feed ourselves, we would sound out this name called kawa. That's the sound of the sea lion, and we call the sea lion kawa.
How has that understanding, that inner standing, moved through your lineage as Kuuyux to the place that we are today with the Western world's understanding that I speak, therefore I am, instead of I am, therefore I speak? How have you navigated that transition? How do you navigate that transition?
Yeah. Well, this language today is almost non-existent. We have maybe 184 speakers, fluent speakers of Unangan Tunuk out of 3,000 people. So they are trying now to restore it if they can, and everyone prays that it will be restored, and I think it will. Even the young ones are speaking Unangan Tunuk, and they're learning how to speak it. And so that hurt a great deal as is all cultures that are losing their language, because this language is a way that we communicate with Mother Earth. And if we listen, then we would hear what Mother Earth is saying. And we have to slow down. In Western society, everything is faster. Faster computers. Even the kids who are born today, they speak faster than we did. And so you're going, and cars are moving faster, planes are moving faster, everything is moving faster. When this is another reverse society paradigm, you have to slow down in order to find out what you must do with Mother Earth. And now we are speeding up so much that, and we're disconnected and separated from everything that is really important to us. And what's really important to us is you listen to your heart. Traditionally, the heart used to tell the mind what to do. Now, the mind tells the heart what to do. And it's, again, another reversal. And that in the heart is the, logic and rational thinking is one thing, but the heart is transrational. And it is the only place where we are in touch with the divine. And, people wonder, you people, they say, you have this thing where you have original instructions. How did you get that? And how we got it is not because we watched everything on Earth and knew how it operated and then corrected ourselves. No, we received that. We received this original instruction from what we call the womb at the center of the universe. Mm-hmm. And the identical, and that's the place of creation and creativity. And the identical field of energy is in every woman's womb. This is why women were considered sacred all over the world at one point in time. And now it's male dominated. And we're ignoring the feminine side within ourselves as well as outside of ourselves, with tragic results for human beings. Because when I learned, for example, is the men would do things like cooperate and collaborate and share and all these things that might be considered feminine. Mm-hmm. And they understood that the best hunters and fishermen were people who had those qualities. Now, there's a good reason for that, because I remembered when I loved seabirds. We have 2.5 million seabirds, and on an island that's tiny, and they only congregate on the edges of the island because they live on cliffs. And at 6 years old, I loved to be around the seabirds, and so, given our ways, I was allowed to go out from the village at 6 years old at 3:00 in the morning by myself to go to the nearest bird cliff, which was 3 miles away. And today that might be considered, child abuse, but this was our way. And so I would go underneath the cliff, crawl across the salt boulder, and I'd go at 3:00 in the morning because the sun would rise by 6:00. And I wanted to be there when the birds woke up. And there's a reason for that. So when I went there, I would watch the birds wake up from where they were and start flying, and they would congregate in front of the cliff and fly around until they collected enough members of their own species to go out foraging. And there are many different kinds of species. I'm telling you, the sound was incredible. You had thick-billed murres, common murres, least ocrates, crested ocrates, tufted puffins, horned puffins, all kinds of species, and they're all sitting in different ways, and they're all on the cliff by layers based on what their species was. The least ocrates would stay in the rocks down at the bottom, and the tufted puffins would stay on top where they could burrow into the land. And the rest of the birds would stay on the rocks themselves on the cliff. And the sound was just, I mean, there must have been at least 10,000 or more seabirds underneath that cliff. And the sound was quite incredible. And I loved the fact that they were all making their own sound. And I felt like they were celebrating. And they're celebrating their life for that moment. And they're flying in every which direction. They would fly diagonally right, diagonally left, sideways, going in every which direction. Over 10,000 seabirds, and none of them even kept a wing. I noticed that when I was 6. They never even they never hit each other. And there's so many of them, you wonder how they do that. And so I said, what's the difference between a seabird and me? And I thought, well, birds don't think. They just are. And I got words for it later on, where they're a field of awareness. And this field of awareness informs them as to where to go. And so I decided at 6 years old, I want to be a seabird. And so I worked at not thinking for 2 months until not a word had come through my head. And I could go do that for hours, even today. And then when I decided to use this way, where I learned out hunting and fishing, where the men, I would go out with maybe 5 hunters. They would go to the edge of the island and use high-powered rifle to shoot for sea lion. And they never got daydreaming or sleeping. We might go out there at 6 o'clock in the morning and be there for 8 hours. And I'm 6 years old, at 6 years old, I don't know how they stay awake. The men would stay awake the whole time, but they were just focused, sitting on the basalt boulders, looking at sea. Now, mind you, there's 180 degrees of ocean, and the sea lion could pop up anywhere. And so I got daydreaming and sleeping by noon, after 6 or 7 hours. I would get daydreaming and sleepy, but the men never did. I thought that was magical. And then someone would say, Kawaka, sea lion coming. Now, instantly, all the men would look at one spot in the ocean without anyone pointing. And they would look at that spot. And so I looked there, and I looked, and there's no sea lion. And then, but the men were still sure the sea lion is right there. So I continued watching, and sure enough, the sea lion would pop up exactly where they were looking. And then I apply that to fishing. I would fish for halibut, hook, line, and sinker. And I could tell you when the halibut is coming to the line. I can tell you when it bites the line, how they're bitten, they're hooked by the lip or the jaw or the side of the body. I can tell you what size it is. I can tell you whether or not it's male or female. I can tell you how it's going to fight on the way up. All of this because I used what the seabirds had taught me. Then I realized that the men also learned that. They never told me stories about that, but the men learned that from the birds. And so this is what the best hunters and fishermen would do. They would be that way. They would suspend their thought and go to the intelligence of the human body. And we all have the ability to do that, but we've forgotten.
Yes. There's so much attention to the mind that we forget the body. Kelsey?
There's a lot of hype right now with artificial intelligence in a sense of us outsourcing and our ways of knowing. And it correlates to what you were saying earlier on the emphasis or speed, right? But there's also even those who are speaking to the power of artificial intelligence for effectively addressing climate change too. And so, just want to hear your thoughts on what you would like those listening to this conversation and the broader world to take into consideration when it comes to artificial intelligence and this whole body, heart-centered way of being and knowing you were speaking of.
Yeah, that's a good question too. Well, the elders that I work with, I help to create wisdom weavers of the world. And you can find it out by going to www.wisdomweaver.world as to who we are. And they're saying that the time for secrets is done. We must live what we know is true, and that is no more secrets. We're going to share even our cultural ways. We're not going to separate by thinking that they might steal it. And these ways, one of the things that the elders understand is that state-of-the-art thinking and state-of-the-art technologies are not going to be the answers to what we're facing today. And you think about state-of-the-art thinking, for example, we convert to hybrid fuel, right? And so when the U.S. government decided to go to hybrid fuel, the world's farmers, many of the world's farmers, took to converting from food crops to fuel crops. And what that did was increase the cost of food and increase starvation around the world. That's an example of a good state-of-the-art thinking. And, I can cite you example after example of how this is so true. But what they say we must do now is go to your heart. Your heart has passion, compassion, love, patience, understanding, all these things that we're seeking now to find what we must do. And that the mind is going to continue doing what it's doing and is indoctrinated with the thought of separation. We are separate from everything, including Mother Earth. And this separation is filtering into everything that we are creating today. That's why the elders call this the reverse society or the inside-out society, because we reverse all the laws for living. And that most salient point is that we are so dependent on the mind. And the mind is always thinking of the past or the future. And through guilt, shame, remorse, anger, rage, everything, jealousy, everything that's haunting us that we are living in today, or projection into the future of something that hasn't even happened yet. Every place except now, the proverbial now, this moment. And it's only in this moment and in the heart that it will tell you what you need to do during this time. It's very it's a very difficult and challenging time for human beings. And that when you go to your heart will tell you. And the elders say, there are no more gurus, singular gurus anymore. We are all gurus now, all of us. And that we just are asleep to that. And that what we must do is help people wake up. And they also say that, we're trying to stop things. We're stopping, oil drilling and mining and all these kinds of things. And that you are feeling like it's not right. And so you're focusing the energy on stopping something, and you have mental, physical, and spiritual energy. And we all acknowledge that. And when you put this energy into that which you want to stop, it gets bigger. And what you must do instead, they're saying, is you must focus on that which you want to create without reaction to anything. And so this is why, as I understand it, the world is facing all these problems, and we're looking outside because we have no personal authority, and we are so disconnected that we are only in the mind. And so we're out of the present moment and out of the heart. And so the elders say, you will never find the answers to what you must do until you do this. And so this is why most of the world's indigenous elders are working towards trying to elevate what the elders are saying about what we must do now. And hopefully, and that's one of the reasons I'm on this program here, is to invite you to explore this in yourself, not outside yourself, but in yourself. And through that exploration, the elders say the most unselfish thing that we can do as human beings is to heal ourselves. That's the most unselfish thing that you can do. Because when you heal yourself, you go to your heart, and your heart will tell you what you need to do. I talked with Don Alejandro, who was the keeper of the day calendar for the Mayans, and we spent a week together in Canada. And at the end of the week, he concluded, we're going to go into some very hard times, and I'm not going to be here to help you. In fact, he passed away a few years ago. He said, the people who are going to negotiate this time the best are people of the fire, which means people of the heart. And those are the ones that are going to make it through. Now, Mother Earth, we still have some elders around the world that understand this and know what I'm talking about, and that is that they talk with Mother Earth, and Mother Earth is telling them what she's going to do. And one of the things that she's going through a time of purification, and that means that she must rid herself of all these things that are creating her sickness. And one of the reasons she's telling us is to help us to realize that we must act now, because she is going to increase her powers in earthquakes, fire, floods, droughts, all these kinds of things that are happening now that are mild compared to what she says she's going to do if people don't listen. And it's going to be a very short time. So it's not a question about whether or not the Earth, Mother Earth, is going to survive. It's a question about whether or not we are going to survive. And Mother Earth, she survived for billions of years. She's going to survive for billions more. It's a question of whether or not we humans will wake up, become real human beings, and live in harmony with all that is.
Okay. Okay. What does it mean to be a human being from the perspective of your growing into this role that you have as a conduit for your cultural wisdom and as an elder in your tradition now, in communication with the people who are the managers of the systems that are violating Mother Earth? What does it mean to be a human being?
Yeah, that's the central question. And a real human being, all the names of the indigenous people in Alaska, as well as many other places around the world, means the human being or the real human being, the real people. They don't mean that in ways of saying, I'm separate from you. They're saying that this is a way of life. And I feel like it's a message from the wisdom keepers of the past, our ancestors, to today, that we have these names that mean the people are the real people. Inuit, Inupiat, Yupik, Unangan, all of these things in Alaska means the human being is the real human being. And what it means is that my people showed me how to do this. And they were very spiritual beings, all of my culture at one point in time. And they never planned where they're going to get their food the next day. Now, mind you, that seems like anathema today. Not planned. Your whole village is going to die if you don't know where you're going to go. But no, they understood that all we had to do was be present in the moment and in our hearts. We set our intention, which has to be in harmony with all that is, and that's it. You just let go. They knew that the answers will come. I asked my elder on St. Paul Island, what's this all about culture anyway? Why do we have that? And he points his finger and he says, you see that seabird flying there? Do you think it worries about where it's going to get the food the next day? And are we any different? And of course, the answer is no, except that we've forgotten the process of how to do it. That's another reversal we've done. We're focusing on goal. Instead, the elders understand we have to focus on process. It's more important than goal, because the goal, if the process is correct, is put together properly, the goal is always far exceeds what we expected in the first place. And my people, as a result of this understanding, developed the most densely populated linear mile of shoreline in all of North America for our time. And a place that's hard to eke out a living. And the answer is still within us. It's in our hearts. So I'm saying you want to plan, fine, but don't put your energy into that, your spiritual, physical, and mental energies into that. Or into instead be present in the moment, in the heart, and focus your intention. Now, the elders say, when we focus on something, it becomes our reality. Or if you're focusing on stopping something, that's going to become your reality.
Should have brought this up at the beginning and bring it up now. What is the role of women in traditional Unangan society?
Yeah, our culture was matrilineal because we lived next to water. and the water is feminine in quality and character. And we even have a moon calendar that we use. And it was the women who initiated our shamans, not the other way around, because they contain the sacred energy as the womb at the center of the universe. They know. And so that's why they were the ones that initiated our shaman. And the men and women, they would have agreed to roles. They had to agree to those roles, both of them, male and female. And so they did that. And that's how we structured our culture. And it was the women who appointed chiefs, not the village, not one man, one person, one vote. It was done by the women. And so this is something that the world is divorced from now. And we're in a world of duality. And this duality, right, wrong, left, right, good, bad, Republican, Democrat, all of these are separation themes. We've indoctrinated our minds into thinking that all these ways of separation are normal. But it's something that has created our spiritual sickness, I believe, that we must wake up from. Otherwise, we're done for. Now, I'm going to be the last Kuuyux that is left alive out of a culture that has celebrated that for thousands of years. And the reason for that is that either we get it and we wake up to being real human beings, in which case we don't need another Kuuyux, or we trash it and we're gone. Either way, a new Kuuyux is not going to be needed. Now, there are many cultures that have messengers like me, and they say the same thing. So anyway, what's going to unfold, many cultures understand that we are in the fourth world, moving into the fifth world. Some say the sixth world. But this means that there were 3 other civilizations on Mother Earth that existed before we came. They're thousands and thousands and thousands of years old, and we've forgotten that. Now we're in the fourth world, and the past world were destroyed by one of the 4 sacred elements: earth, wind, fire, and water. The last one was water. And so we're moving into the fifth world, and this world means that time is going to collapse on itself, and we are going to be present in the moment. And those who choose not to do this, do these things that are necessary to be a real human being, are going to be gone. And so it's important to understand that we humans are only one of many that are in existence that have spirit same way we do. I like to use the example of a rubber glove. I was talking to a bunch of ministers at the time, and I say, you take this rubber glove, blow it up. These fingers think they're human, when in fact they're one breath. And so everything in existence is the same way.
You were just speaking about the power of the feminine and women and the women in your life. Would love for you to speak to the significance of your collective and relations at this point in your life. And then if you'd like to, I know, as we wrap up, segue that also, you talk to the wisdom weavers, but you work with GCIL the Global Center for Indigenous Leadership and Lifeways as well.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. First of all, to complete my thought about the role of women today, my understanding is that when women get together in sisterhood, they can heal themselves quickly. It's not like us men who would take years and years and lifetime to learn something. The women can do it like this if they get together in sisterhood. Now, the women are the containers for this, like the womb at the center of the universe. And they can tap into it by, after they heal themselves, they can project this energy vibrationally on the outside to create a container for something new to be birthed. Until this happens, nothing new is going to be birthed in this world. Let me tell you, state-of-the-art thinking, state-of-the-art technology, no. It's going to be this container that something new is going to be birthed. And the men's job is to protect the space of women so they can do their work. And I met my wife, Yael, in Israel. I went to Israel a few years ago, and she had seen a video that I had presented, and it related to her so much, of things that she knew that she could not share with anybody in Israel because they wouldn't understand. But she felt like, I'm talking about women's stuff, and what is that? Is that a con job? And so she contacted me, and she decided to do a program to interpret what I said in Hebrew. And so she did that and went all across Israel, and so many women liked it that they called her up and said, we got to have this man here. And she, of course, we were talking all over the video on Zoom for years, about 3 or 4 years, before we actually met. But I had fallen in love with her. And she had fallen in love, unbeknownst to me, she had fallen in love with me. And she thought, she was thinking, he's on video only, and on Zoom only. He's not going to be here, so I don't have to deal with it. But when I got there, I had asked her since the women in Israel were talking, wanting to hear me talk. I instructed her in my way about what we needed to do. And so we decided to have the meeting where we would exercise teach the women how to exercise their own power and spiritual power. It's invisible. It's not visible work. This is why we say women's work is invisible. It's not because you're ignoring it. It's because it is spiritual work. And so we decided to do it at the great water bodies adjacent to Israel. The Dead Sea, that Americans call it, and a Sea of Galilee, and all these water bodies. And so I taught them that they need to take their own power. I had expressed that feeling, and here's how one of the ways you can do it. And so I said, you've got to do this ceremony next to these water bodies. And they decided, okay, they'll do that. They didn't know anything about the ceremony with women, but I taught them about one way that they could do it. And they created their own ceremony. And each time we met at the different water bodies, there would be more and more women that would show up until there were hundreds. And so they did these ceremonies, and the ceremonies are very important. We don't understand our own powers with regard to ceremony. But when we do ceremonies properly, the results are always greater than you expect. So the next year, the Dead Sea, as it's called, sprouted out with all kinds of flowers. It hadn't sprouted in years, and there was life there. And that's just one example. Anyway, so I told you, I love you. And she said she'll think about that. But the next day she says, yes, I love you too, truth be known. And so as a result of that, we worked at getting her to the U.S., get naturalized. And so now she's here with her two daughters. One of the things that helped her decide was the reaction of her two daughters, who were only 6 and 8 years old at the time. And she saw her youngest daughter, Neva, take my hand to cross the street to get some ice cream. And, that showed that her kids were trusting me. And they don't trust strangers at all. So that was what decided that for her. And she is now working at the Wombs of Peace, it's called, because of what's happening in our own home country and what's happening around the world. We need peace. And she understands that in order to have peace, you've got to be peaceful yourself. You have to become peace. If we want love, you have to be love. And until you do that, that's what your heart is telling you to do. It's not going to happen. So anyway, her Wounds of Peace is a talking circle, and it involves women and healing themselves so that they can do their work.
It's beautiful. As we wrap up, and I'll let K2 finalize any questions, but I just wanted to create space once more too. Is there anything you want to speak to for our listeners and what they can follow up on around the Global Center for Indigenous Leadership in Lifeways? So just want to pose that, or any other kind of final questions, invitations you'd like to extend to our audience who's listening or watching.
Well, I asked my elder, what does culture provide us? And that elder said, our professors for our cultures are 2-year-old children. And now you watch a 2-year-old child. I was watching two little boys one time. They were playing with each other and having a happy time. And then all of a sudden, something the other did made the child mad. And he put his whole body into expressing his anger. And then 2 minutes later, they were playing again. Now, one of my elders, Rita Blumenstein, who was the keeper, who was the spiritual guide for the Indigenous Council of Grandmothers, the World Indigenous Council of Grandmothers, She said, when you have feelings of any kind, be them good or bad, and you don't express it becomes piled up inside of your body. And eventually it is toxic. It will kill you. And this is what children do. They're automatically doing it. They're naturally doing it. They are expressing their feeling in the moment that they have it. And that's what we must do, good and bad, happiness and pain. All of these things need to be expressed, but we are living in a world that does not acknowledge our emotions. If a man cried in a business meeting, that would be a no-no, right? You don't express yourself. And so we forget about that. But when you have that feeling, you say, okay, I acknowledge you feeling. I'm going to get to you right away as soon as I can. And when you do that, you make sure that you follow up and do it with a friend, preferably, because a friend can help you, support you while you're going through whatever you're going through. But do it. Express that feeling. Let it go. The world sages have said, all we have to do is let go of all these things we are attached to. And when we do that, we are becoming a real human being.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kuuyux. Thank you for this conversation, for your work in the world as a wisdom keeper, for bringing the beauty and the intelligence and the love and the understanding of your people to the rest of the world and to those who really understand what you're saying. I truly understand what you're saying. And just want to say thank you, and thank you again.
Yeah, well, thank you. I can see from your face that you have gone through some stuff in your life that has made you where you are now. And so I'm very grateful to meet you and Kelsey, and hopefully your audience finds things that are useful to them in their lives, and that I understand and I follow this rule. I don't interfere with another person's sacred path. That I can lay things out in a plate, and whether or not you pick it up is your choice, not mine. It's none of my business to get involved with that, but just to offer it. And that's what I've done. So thank you for this opportunity to talk, and the spaciousness in which we have the hour and a half to talk about it. Usually I'm given, 15 minutes or a half hour. So this is good.
We have done our best to decolonize this space.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you found this conversation insightful and thought-provoking. Please like and follow the Proven Sustainable podcast to spread the word and stay tuned for more engaging dialogues. Additional information and resources are available within the episode description and online at provensustainable.org.